I was the black sheep in the family, and my brother constantly slandered me. When I became successful, my parents begged for financial help. Instead, I am Emily, a 27-year-old woman, and my twin brother's name is Michael. John and Mary treated Michael and me extremely differently when we were kids. My parents really appeared to believe that Michael was born to be great, and I was the black sheep since I preferred socializing and athletic activities above academics. From an early age on, my self-esteem was harmed by the demoralizing and humiliating comparisons they made between us. Michael and his buddies would throw me lavish birthday parties when I was a kid, and I felt like an afterthought. Even though I was never permitted to invite my friends back to our apartment, he often had sleepovers. Truthfully, I despised my whole upbringing. My Aunt Sarah was the only one of my relatives who really seemed concerned for my well-being. She would always bring me my favorite chocolates and sometimes even sneak a few bucks so I could treat myself later when she visited us. With the passing of time, this obvious preference for Michael evolved into emotional assault, aimed at me. A lot of the time, my parents would make fun of my interests and critique my schoolwork. It seemed like I would never measure up to their ideal of a perfect kid, no matter how hard I tried. I was brilliant in athletics, but my parents wanted me to be like Michael and focus only on school, so I was banned from participating in any extracurricular activities. I remember feeling powerless and frustrated as a youngster because of it. I was grounded for the second time that year this time. It was for using Instagram on my phone. I had done nothing wrong other than to use this program to keep in touch with my pals, like many teens my age do. On the other hand, my folks saw this as a major betrayal of their trust, as they had already forbade me from contacting my pals. They went absolutely berserk with me, scattering my belongings all over the room. I was informed that I would not have any privacy as long as I remained under their roof, and they proceeded to remove my doors from their hinges. Michael did nothing to alleviate my suffering as he saw my parents mistreat me. He took advantage of the poisonous atmosphere that our parents' unfair acts had fostered. He began to fabricate stories about me, accusing me of things I never done, in order to cover up his own mistakes. He could easily make me seem like the thief whenever he took something, and my parents, who were quick to assume the worst about me, fell for his falsehoods. He would make fun of my looks and insult me in front of my Lincoln High School classmates. This aside, I was able to cultivate a large social circle at Lincoln because I was friendly and eager to meet new people. But Michael had a hard time interacting with others, and he began to dislike that I was outgoing while he was shy and uncomfortable. When nobody turned up to celebrate his 13th birthday with him, my jealousy hit a breaking point. I don't understand why his friends treated him that way, but on the other side, my friends treated me to ice cream, and the day was great all around. This only served to further enrage Michael. Michael, in an effort to get his retribution, started spreading malicious stories about me at school, describing me as an entitled brat. He would make up stories about how I was physically assaulting him at home and tell everyone about it. He escalated to a worrisome degree, while I was unaware of it, since our parents loved him more. He would intentionally inflict injuries on himself, such as a black eye or bruised shoulder, in order to falsify proof. His self-inflicted wounds would be proudly shown the next day as evidence of my alleged aggression and embellishments as he strutted boldly into Lincoln. He would tell our parents that his injuries were the result of harmless activities, like playing basketball with his pals, whenever they questioned him about them. As word spread about his purported black eyes and other fabrications, more and more people began to accept his warped account of events. Shortly after, rumors began to circulate. I even started to get suspicious looks from my pals. Changes were little and inconspicuous at first. Suddenly, my once cordial hallway companions stopped talking to me at all. The frequency and quality of invitations to group hangouts declined. People were afraid to be around the violently accused, allegedly spoilt girl. It was as if a switch had been flicked. After a while, I worked up the nerve to ask Laura, my ex-best friend, why we had grown apart. She said that Michael had been making up stories about me. All the falsehoods he had stated about me, including accusations of wrongdoing that I had never committed, were exposed by her. Hearing what she had to say stunned me. A sense of betrayal and astonishment washed over me, as if the very foundations of my being had crumbled. I was the victim of false accusations made by my brother, with whom I had a close relationship throughout my childhood. A heavy heart and a knot in my stomach were left behind by a betrayal that wounded deep. Michael ignored me when I approached him the day after school. I pleaded with him to stop spreading false rumors about me, but he only grinned and said I should die alone. I didn't know what to say since his deceit and actions were becoming more terrifying. I wanted to confide in my parents, but I was worried they would put more stock in Michael than in me. Being alone hurt so much since I had never been one to close to strangers. The relationships I had worked so hard to cultivate seemed to be crumbling under the weight of Michael's jealously driven falsehoods. The news eventually made its way to the classroom as well. It felt as if I were in a parallel universe where my evil twin had fabricated a narrative to make me feel like I wasn't really alive. By now, the falsehoods had progressed beyond the level of casual adolescent chatter. They were now influencing people's genuine impressions of me. My biggest dread came true when Principal Thompson heard the horrible story. Our parents and Michael and I were summoned to Principal Thompson's office without delay to address these allegations. My pulse was racing as I listened to Principal Thompson grill us for the facts. Instead of coming clean, Michael just continued to lie. I was hoping he would eventually admit it, accusing me of being a bully who would attack him when his parents weren't teed around. He informed Principal Thompson that the stories were really true. It seemed unbelievable to me. I was taken aback as Michael persisted in fabricating this convoluted tale about my resentment of him for receiving more affection from our parents. He was unmoved by the fact that his tale was based on nothing but falsehoods. My mom started sobbing and clutching Michael tightly, as if he were a hero. Michael was comforted by my dad's words that he was courageous to speak up and that he would protect Michael from harm. I made an effort to explain myself after that day, telling Principal Thompson that everything had been fabricated. As I struggled to find a way to rise above the torrent of allegations directed at me, Michael persisted in portraying me as a violent, angry person who took out her emotions on him on a daily basis. As she clutched Michael and sent me angry glances, my mom's tears continued to flow. Struggling against the belief in Michael's made-up tale was like struggling against a wall of rock. Lincoln did not condone bullying, according to Principal Thompson's stern rebuke, and I was therefore suspended. He shook his head and said he couldn't let it go, even though I begged him not to suspend me. Tears flowing down my face, I pleaded with him, attempting to convey the idea that I had done nothing wrong to Michael. In order to send a strong message to other students, Principal Thompson informed me that I would be punished for 11 days if I bullied anybody. I began to weep even more and begged him to think again, as the impact struck me hard. As a result of my parents' embarrassment and anger, I was forcibly removed from Principal Thompson's office. I resisted the urge to go. I tried to explain everything in detail, but they were not listening. My spirit was burdened with shame and annoyance as we departed from Lincoln. The tide turned dramatically the moment we returned home. It came as a surprise when my dad began packing away my belongings. I didn't know what was occurring and was filled with astonishment and confusion. When my mom confronted him about it, he just yelled that he would no longer allow me to live with Michael. Michael remained emotionless as I begged him to give them the truth while sobbing and almost kneeling down on the floor. Before tossing the bag into our entryway, my dad began to load my belongings. I begged my dad one more time not to kick me leave as I clutched to his knees. Something out of a nightmare was happening. He warned me that I didn't belong in his home and threatened to have his sister, my Aunt Sarah, come and get me if I continued to be a bully. It seemed as if everything had come tumbling down around me. My possessions were in a jumbled heap in the entryway as I stood there in disbelief, evicted from my own house. Aunt Sarah did, in the end, make her appearance. With her assistance, I loaded all my belongings into the vehicle and settled into the passenger seat. She checked that I was fastened to my safety belt before making her way to my parents' house. She went as far as to shout at my dad for the way he was treating me as soon as he answered the door after she rang the doorbell. She was quite firm in her warning that she would not hesitate to notify the police or CPS if he attempted to contact me or approach me again, as his actions against a vulnerable youngster like me may lead to his imprisonment. Trying to shift the responsibility away from herself, my mom told her it was my fault. Nonetheless, Aunt Sarah was unmoved. Standing firm in my defense, she emphasized that I was just a kid and that I had no business being treated so badly despicable stance. I had never before experienced the sheer magnitude of Aunt Sarah's influence until that moment. Despite what my parents thought, she trusted me and didn't tremble before them. We finally got in the car and left, taking with us my childhood home and the only place I had ever known. The horrible anguish I felt at that moment beyond description. No matter how much Aunt Sarah begged me to eat, all I can remember is sobbing on the bed. I informed her about Michael's actions, and she was equally taken aback. I had her word that she bought into my version of events. It meant a lot to me to know that someone was rooting for me to succeed. The thought of going back to Lincoln once the 11-day ban was removed was like returning to a lioness lair. The judgment, murmurs, and sidelong looks on my classmates' faces as I walked into the familiar halls said it all. A heaviness from the baseless allegations persisted. Michael, meantime, shrugged his shoulders and like I didn't exist. He had made friends with a few of individuals who bought into his narrative and blamed me for his misfortune. My attempts to explain what happened from my perspective were completely ignored. Whether I was in the classroom, the cafeteria, or the hallways, the unfair label that had been placed on me followed me like a shadow. I was an outsider. The look of contempt and distrust that greeted mine was palpable. I withdraw inside myself. In those days, I would bury my head in my work, go to every class, have lunch in the cafeteria by myself, and then go straight home. No one seemed to want me around, and I was completely alone. My parents never once contacted to see how I was doing throughout this whole ordeal. This was not my fault, Aunt Sarah would tell me time and time again, and everything will be okay in the end. I was excited to attend to college after graduating from Lincoln with respectable marks with the hopes of improving my lot in life. I was enticed by Boston University's stellar reputation and the prospect of a new beginning, away from the harmful atmosphere I had to escape, so I decided to enroll. Leaving my sleepy village behind, I embraced the anonymity and independence that Boston's vibrant city life had to offer. I had my first taste of independence when I left for college. No one was peeping over my shoulder, comparing my grades, or attempting to outdo me than I was in the past. I made acquaintances with folks who shared my interests and values. I focused on making the most of my college experience and putting the past, with all its emotional and physical wounds, behind me. Even though it was little, my dorm room felt like home. In this place, I could let my guard down and be myself, free from the burden of my past. There was a flurry of activity during orientation, plenty of new faces, and rigorous coursework in the first few weeks. With the goal of making the most of this chance, I dove myself into my coursework and extracurriculars. I hit it well with Jessica, my roommate, and a few of my classmates right away. We became close as a group and spent a lot of time together, whether it was studying, seeing the city, or going to school functions. Feelings of true joy and support returned to my life after a long absence. A mysterious number texted me one brisk autumn afternoon as I was on my way to my favorite caf off campus to meet Jessica for a study session. "Guess who S at BU too?" Michael said in the message, sending shivers down my spine. It was devastating to learn that my brother was a student at Boston University as well. It felt like my past was following me, even though I had picked BU to get away from it. In an effort to make sense of everything, my thoughts raced. I waited to inform my pals so I wouldn't scare them or come out as paranoid. To avoid having my newfound serenity disturbed by Michael's presence on campus, I redirected my attention to my studies. Michael was missing for days, if not weeks. Maybe he was only attempting to tease me, I told myself, and I started to calm down. But then, on my way back to my dorm room after a late-night study session, I recognized a voice. "Emily!" he yelled out. Michael was standing beneath a street lamp when I turned back. He had a menacing smirk on his face. Remembering all the times he lied to me or betrayed me made my heart race as I stood before him. I attempted to keep my voice calm as I shouted, "What are you doing here, Michael?" Michael approached with an arrogant grin on his face. I was hoping it would be nice to attend the same university as my beloved sister. After all, we are related, aren't we? I clenched my fists, my wrath building up. "Get away from me, Michael. You've caused enough harm." Michael's laughter was icy and disturbing. "Oh, Emily, you haven't seen anything yet." Having Michael around became more and more unnerving as the weeks went by. He had a habit of showing up in places he knew I frequented, either to observe me from a distance or to make derogatory remarks or spread stories among my new acquaintances. My social life and academic performance suffered as a result of my mounting worry. My friend Jessica advised that we notify the university administration about Michael's harassment after I confided in her. My agreement was reluctant. We had a meeting with the dean and gave him the rundown. The dean acknowledged our worries and assured us that he would monitor Michael and look out for my well-being. The school could not stop Michael from going, but they could warn him and keep an eye on him. Still, I felt like someone was watching me the whole time. Under my door one night was a message that read, "You can escape the past." I was so scared that I contacted Jessica, who came running over to my dorm room right away. We thought the cops should get involved now. I went into depth about Michael's abusive past and his current harassment when I petitioned for a restraining order against him. Promptly, the authorities warned Michael of dire repercussions in the event that he made additional contact. Although the restraining order provided some solace, the psychological wounds persisted. I knew getting over Michael would be a process, but I was hell-bent on making the most of my college years. My friends in the university helped me start to feel safe again. It was at this time that I realized I had a real talent for writing articles. Being a writer was my lifelong dream, but I doubted it would be financially stable in the long run. I thus chose to give up on my ambition. Still, I took up freelance writing as a means to supplement my income. A number of well-known customers hired me after I signed up for freelancing websites. Using this method, I was able to gradually compile a portfolio of my work. I kept up this side job while I was in college and never once approached my parents for money. I decided to pursue content writing as a full-time career after graduating from college rather than obtaining a corporate job. I was able to juggle a number of projects because to my extensive customer list and the strong professional ties I had cultivated with them over the years. I became a digital nomad and was able to travel the globe thanks to my genuine freelance profession. Despite the challenges, traveling helped me overcome my past. I risked all I had saved up and went for it. The world has shown me so much throughout the years, and there is still so much more for me to discover. Aunt Sarah was the only one I thought of as family throughout this whole ordeal, and I cherished her. Although she was upset about my leaving, she finally came to terms with the fact that I needed to go out on my own. No matter how busy I was, I would always find time to be at her side. On weekends, I would drop over to see her. We would have lunch together or just sit on the porch and talk about anything and everything, from stories from our youth to current events. During the weekend, I would spend the whole day assisting her with housework or going for a stroll with her in the park. One of the most significant projects I have ever worked on is now complete. I had the incredible fortune to be asked to write blogs and product descriptions for a certain business, but I will not reveal their identity. I asked the team I worked with to post glowing testimonials about me on my websites when the job was over, and they gladly obliged. To add to my Instagram, I proceeded to capture screenshots of a few of their evaluations. Since I was aware that collaborating with this company was a major thing, many other writers got in touch to offer their congratulations on my career accomplishment, and even republish my article to make it even more viral. Strangers who were likewise in need of assistance with their websites began contacting me via this medium. Even my extended family took note, and a few of them went out of their way to offer their congratulations. After some time had passed, Dr. Stevens, the principal of my institution, called me. He asked me to give a lecture at his institution to advise students on how to launch a successful career in content writing after he's seen how well I was doing. Public speaking isn't my strong suit, so I was understandably anxious, but I figured I may as well agree nonetheless. It seemed as if my life had finally made sense when I was standing in front of an enthusiastic audience, sharing my wisdom and experiences. In my address, I detailed the hardships I endured and the ways in which I persevered to meet my basic needs. Having the ability to inspire others and aid in the development of the Writer-S community was, to be honest, a really rewarding experience. As more and more people related to my videos in Facebook groups, a few of them began to become viral. It was pleasant to be at last had my efforts acknowledged. An invitation to appear on a local news station came my way last week. The host of the program asked me to share my story and the lessons I have learned along the way since they were discussing the value of content creation. As much as I was looking forward to the chance, I was also a little anxious. I spoke about my background, the value of customer evaluations, and the power of a simple thank you message to generate amazing possibilities throughout the presentation. It was a thrilling and humbling chance to inspire more people in the profession and reach a wider audience. I was so honored to have been invited to a TV program that I proudly uploaded parts from it on Instagram when it eventually aired. This is how my extended family learned about my professional success. The reason my parents were unaware of my collaborations with well-known businesses and television appearances is because they never mentioned me to anybody. Word went throughout my family like wildfire in this way. I put my phone on quiet while I was working on another assignment a few days later, so I presume my parents also heard about this TV interview. Surprisingly, my mom had left 5 messages for me when I checked my phone after finishing my job. It had been an extremely long time since she had phoned me, so seeing her name on my phone astonished me. Why she would contact me after all those years was a mystery to me. She returned my call without hesitation, and I could see she was nervous. As soon as I inquired as to her well-being, my mother began to offer me her congratulations. My dad, who was likely seated next to Mom, also joined in. I responded carelessly to his queries about my life and health as he began to probe for details. Until people started inquiring about my salary lately, I didn't think it was strange. My dad urged me not to be hesitant about telling them how much money I make, even though I told them it was none of their concern. My financial situation was good, I informed him. After my mom heard this, she started to complain about how tough their lives were right now. My eyebrows arched with mistrust. Here is a general outline of what we discussed. Mom, we are retired now, and we have been wanting to renovate the house for a while now. It's not in the best shape, but we have no savings left. Me, okay, Mom, your success has given us hope. After watching your TV interview today, we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. Dad, after all, we are a family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We can really use your help. Me? Are you joking with me? Why are you asking me for money when you haven't even talked to me for years? I don't know what made you decide to reach out to me, and while I appreciate the congratulations, I am not going to help you out in any way. Upon hearing this, my mom began berating me for being self-centered and insisting that I should prioritize our family SE needs. It was the least I could do to take care of my parents, my dad said, and they deserved it. I wanted to scream at them because this was making me so angry. Instead of battling with them, I should show them what happens when others treat you badly, a lesson they should learn from their past mistreatment of me. I made it clear to my folks that I would provide them a hand, but only if they caved to my requests. Curious, my dad wanted to know what it was. I made my desire clear without hesitating. They had to openly accuse Michael of being the brains behind the damaging rumors that had stained my reputation if they wanted my assistance, in the presence of our loved ones. After they publicly shamed me for falling for Michael's manipulation and falsehoods, I wanted them to do the same to him. It was important to me that them realize the harm they had caused and accept responsibility for their acts. My dad started to doubt the need of such an admission after hearing my difficult situation. It would have been better if we could have our conversation in secret, away from prying eyes, my mom assured me. However, I refused to budge. I could not help them in the future until they agreed to this condition, which was non-negotiable. As things became more heated, my dad became more forceful in his assertion of paternal authority, and he began to stress that I had an obligation to assist my struggling family. Last but not least, my mom emphasized the years they had spent raising me and begged me to assist them out. Their unexpected popularity made me feel ironic. It was Aunt Sarah, not them, who had reared me, and I brought up the past when I reminded them that they had thrown me out. Their anger was rising, but I stood strong and reminded them that Michael had to face the consequences of his actions, and the truth had to be publicly recognized if they wanted to communicate with me and ask for my financial aid going forward. My folks have been attempting to contact me nonstop since our talk, but I keep ignoring them. I'm beginning to feel remorse for even contacting them that day. Please tell me whether it is true that I would be a whole bad person if I did nothing to assist my parents. First update. Everyone is love and encouragement. Since I last shared my story has been incredible, and the last week has flown by. Knowing that I am not going through this alone is a comfort. After all my parents have done to me, I am relieved that everyone thinks I should avoid them and never contemplate assisting them. I knew it would be very difficult for them to meet this criteria, which is why I even said it. Even though they may have discovered by now that it was all Michael's lies, I know they would never subject him to what they subjected me to because they love him too much. After my parents attempted to reach me again today, and I declined to answer their calls, Michael wrote me a nasty text message. He sent the following: "Hey sis, it has been a long time since I saw you, and I can tell you that every day without you in my life has been great. I heard that mom and dad reached out to you, and you gave them a crazy ultimatum. They are never going to go through with it. You know that, right? They clearly never loved you, and they will never do anything to hurt me. I admit that I did lie about you 12 years ago, but it's been a long time since then, so stop being so selfish and try to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless anyway, so why do you not want to help them out by paying for their repairs and renovations around the house? Do the right thing and be a better daughter." The message hit me like a stab in the internal organs. His callous disregard for my hardships and the circumstances I had created was indicative of his profound lack of empathy. The extra layer of insensitivity was the effort to make me feel guilty about being single and without children. His suggestion that I should put their needs before my own was hurtful and showed how unimportant he considered me. I chose to stand up for what was right and expose the long-suppressed truth because I was fed up with being on the receiving end of injustice and wanted to see things made right. As a youngster, I suffered through unjust treatment at my family's hands, and I sat down to compose an email to my parents and close relatives, detailing the horrific events of my upbringing. I contrasted my parents' treatment of Michael to the harsh and repressive atmosphere I experienced growing up in the house. The email went on to discuss the vicious and unfounded allegation that Michael had circulated about me at school, which had serious repercussions and tarnished my image. In my essay, I detailed how my parents had cast me out onto the street and how, if it weren't for Aunt Sarah, I could still be lying dead here. Michael had given me a note, and I requested everyone to read it towards the conclusion. You can see his admission that he lied about me in the accompanying screenshot. It was an honest admission, and I hoped it would reveal the long-suppressed falsehoods. I know my parents and Michael will be furious when they receive the email, which I wrote just an hour ago. When I hear back from my loved ones about my email, I will let you know. Second update. A lot has transpired in the month since my previous report. Upon getting the email, my family did, in fact, explode. Relatives who didn't know how bad the emotional abuse and favoritism became have started criticizing my parents. Many members of my family contacted me to express their sorrow for being absent and to assure me that they were unaware of what had happened. My parents and Michael were sending me a steady stream of increasingly violent and abusive text messages until I finally decided to contact a lawyer who then served them with a stop and desist order. In essence, it served as a warning that they would face severe legal repercussions if they continued to approach me. It seems like this really frightened them, since they suddenly stopped getting in touch with me. By informing everyone about what occurred, Aunt Sarah believes I have done the right thing and is completely behind me. Because she is my only confidant, her support means the world to me. My previous update was 2 months ago, and now we are on update number 3. Right now, I can say that my life is going swimmingly. My freelance article writing company is booming. Requests for keynote speeches at conferences and podcasts keep coming in, further establishing my credibility as an authority in my field. Aunt Sarah and I are still very close. In order to give her the attention she deserves, I recently took a week off from work. These days, she's more interested in gardening, and I learned a lot from her about the many kinds of flowers and herbs she grows. Whether we were eating together, having deep talks, or just hanging out, I will always remember the times I spent with her. I am relieved that my relatives are avoiding me, as they have not been in touch with me since receiving my lawyer's letter. I have begun treatment in the hopes that I may begin the process of mending myself. For the time being, I believe this to be the last update.